All right, good morning. Welcome to the meeting of the Tuolumne County Board of Supervisors for June 8th, 2021. Call this meeting to order. I'll look to Supervisor Goldenberg. Would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Ready? Begin.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. Okay, so before we begin, I'll look to our board clerk, Heather Ryan, to read our public participation procedures.
In order to protect the health and safety of our Tuolumne County citizens, this board meeting is open to the public with modifications. Capacity will be limited to 50 people, including board members and staff. Face coverings and physical distancing of 6 feet will be required. During the board meeting, citizens physically present who wish to provide public comment will be invited to do so by the board chair. Citizens who are not present and wish to comment should be prepared to use our call-in line at 209-533-6581 to queue for verbal public comment. Options for public access audio and video live streaming. The public will not have access for public comments through these media. These are available for audio and visual only. Option number 1 is the Tuolumne County website at www.tuolumnecounty.ca.gov/745/board-meetings. Option number 2, www.accesstuolumne.org and click Watch Live or Comcast Cable 8. Option number 3, Zoom webinar via your computer at https://zoom.us/j/98737385155, or you can call in at 1-669-900-9128 with webinar ID 98737385155. Please note, Zoom webinar services tends to have a reduced broadcasting delay in comparison to the county and Access Tuolumne live streams, and is suggested for the closest to real-time viewing and listening. Important public notice. Under the Governor's Executive Order N2520, this meeting will allow board members or members of the Board of Supervisors to participate by teleconference, and under Order N2920, accessibility requirements. If you need Swift special assistance during the board meeting, please call 209-533-6581.
All right, thank you very much. So at this time, we'll open oral communications. Our board values public participation and encourages community members to take this time to provide comment on matters of county interest. This section is for comment not related to items on the agenda. Public comment time limit of 3 minutes per speaker applies. No action may be taken by the board on topics discussed. Your board members are listening carefully to the comments that you make and appreciate you taking the time and the personal investment in our community. So at this time, I'll invite anyone up in the room to the podium to make their voices heard. Good morning.
Good morning. My name's Dave Doder, and it's nice to have a personal touch with our representatives now. I'm a resident of the South County. My issue today is asking the board to be vigilant on the upcoming biomass project that's going to be unveiling over the next couple of years. I live close to the plant. I've watched the property for years and watched situations come and go that were irregular, but I would offer to meet with any of you if you wanted to hear more about that. I've kind of tracked them closely, but this is the latest iteration. Biomass is not economically viable. The Sierra Nevada Conservancy sent people up here with $22 million to build a bioplant, and the board was unable to come together with any kind of a response to them. They visited 3 sites, and I talked to the head person of that delegation, and he told me that site, A59, was not at all suitable for a bioplant. and I wanted to bet him 2 Giants tickets that maybe that might happen, and here it is. Not the least issue being that it's way away from the forest, and we're talking about resiliency from a fire and dealing with the forest. But biomass, if you go up to the new Harrah's, Northern California, there's a giant bioplant there that's idle because solar and wind power is so much cheaper than biomass power. And so you think, well, how are they going to make this viable? Well, they're going to make wood pellets. Well, if wood pellets were viable, then Sierra Pacific would be making them where the byproducts are up in Standard. So they're going to make wood pellets, and they're going to put them in trains and send them all over the world. Well, they can't send gravel, which is part of the Sierra Railroad's plan, out to the valley because they're having trouble getting through the communities because of the crossings of busy roads and so forth. So if pellets aren't the thing, what would make this worth spending $350 million to build 2 of these plants? Now, this is something I'm just contending, and I was hopefully when you hear these presentations, you'll think that this might be viable. In 2025, the San Joaquin Valley Air District is banning all burning of agricultural products. And then you have mom and pop yards. I have several relatives down there that have a lot of biomass that they can't burn in the county. Sierra Railroad is right now, at this point, eminent domaining 117 acres of the Burchell family nursery on the back end of their property where the railroad is.
I'm sorry,
And-
I have to stop you there. It's 3 minutes per speaker.
Okay, anyway, keep your eye on it, please. There's a 600 to 900 million tons a year of waste that's got to go somewhere.
Thank you.
And contracts like Chinese Camp burns contracts.
Thanks very much. I have to stop you there.
okay.
We have to be respectful
they
of the
burn
time
mostly
limit.
junk from the valley.
Thank you very much.
We won't let that happen. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Okay, was there anyone else from the room that would like to speak?
Good morning,
morning.
everyone. I'm Mark Dyken, Executive Director of Resiliency Village, and wanted to come this morning to report to you on our work with our contract in working with unsheltered folks in the Project Room Key, which we are administering. Just wanted to give you an update on what we're doing there. To date, we've taken about 50 people into care through Project Room Key. There are currently 8 folks staying in one hotel, 12 in another, and a couple in individuals in single hotels and 1 in the hospital. Through the project so far, excuse me, the people who've exited the program, the only ones who've been able to find stable housing had to leave the county. Others have exited into some other living situations or have gone back into cars. And 2 of the folks who exited the program before we would have liked to have seen them go did wind up back at Camp Hope, and 1 of them is currently there now. So we're still working to get the remainder of the folks out of there and move them through the process. I just wanted to tell you, too, that it's not an optimal situation to case manage folks in a hotel and try to run a shelter somewhere where people are also trying to do their business. We have used 7 different hotels throughout the county. It is a little more difficult than it would be if we had them in our own facility, which we'll talk about. Dr. Chapman is here to speak to you about that. But the upshot of it all is there's a little kink in this hose, which is no matter how well we case manage them, no matter how well we've been able to get some of them off their substance use, really see them stabilize when they get into this care. It really does wonders for them, just even the first few nights, to have a place to close the door, lay down, and know your stuff isn't going to be lost. But we simply have nowhere to exit them to at the other end. The housing is just not available. And so that's, obviously something we know that you're working on that. And then we would like to, as we move towards being able to move people out, we are prepared to take about a dozen of them to Resiliency Village. That's where some of them who are in hotels now, that's their permanent exit plan or their stable exit plan. And if we could get into operation up at Resiliency Village, we think we could go back into Camp Hope and get the last, I'm going to guess there's about 12 or 15 more people that will be willing to come into care. And then the rest of the folks, and we've gone multiple times with Calais and other people out there, they're just not going to come in, and we'll have to see what happens with them. But overall, for the amount of money that we've used, and especially when I compare it to other counties, I think we've been really successful, and the numbers are really good for how many people are in, and how little we've had to deal with anything that super negative with the folks. They actually are pretty well behaved in these hotels. I mean, we have had a few incidents, but overall, just getting people in from outdoors and having them in a sheltered place has really made a difference. So just wanted to give you an update on that. That's what's going on with Room Key, and that's our part in it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Come on down. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Brenda Chapman. I am the board president of Resiliency Village. And I wanted to just take this opportunity to give you a little update about how things are going up at the property. On May 22nd, we had a wonderful group of volunteers come up, and they spent the day with us, and they cleaned out garden beds and put in new soil and compost, planted vegetables and flowers, pruned the orchard, and did a lot of weed eating. One of our biggest concerns, as I know it is of all of the citizens of Tuolumne County, is fire mitigation. So we've been working on a plan to mitigate the issues around fire. We have a team who is our forestry experts, and they are helping us with cleaning, clearing, brush mitigation to the forestry standards. We have a fire hydrant that is just right at the edge of on the property line by the driveway. We are looking for a fire tanker so that we can have water right there, and we have forestry people who are willing to show us how to use it. We were very fortunate that the former owners did a really, really good job of hardening that area. So where the structure is, there's no vegetation at all around it. I'm not a very good estimator, but about maybe 50 feet from the actual house, there are some walnut trees. But other than that, there's 100 yards all the way around the building where there's no vegetation whatsoever. So we've cleaned the swimming pool. We've got a fence going in around the pool today. We've hired property managers so that there'll be somebody on site 24/7. And so we are going to have full security there. The one thing that is hanging us up is we are waiting for the county to come and do a site and soil analysis so we can put in some septic systems. And so while we're waiting for that to happen, we're really busy. We're there every single day. We're cleaning, we're organizing, we're getting things ready. And so I just kind of wanted to give you an idea of the things that we're working on at the village. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, is there anyone else from the room that would like to speak? Oh. Good morning.
Good morning. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Tuolumne County. I deliver drug take-back cards, which I've done now for like 3 years, and people were, for the most part, very receptive, except for Frito-Lay, and their representative was hostile and threatening and scared the holy bejesus out of me. So Frito-Lay has heard from me, and if any of you would like more details, I'll be happy to tell you. And there were quite a few people who came to the new location, which was very pleasing. I'm not sure of the poundage that was turned in. And then I also went around with mental health awareness and suicide prevention information again, which I've done, and people were even more receptive. And I heard lots of stories again. And it saddened me that recent statistics, as far as I know, our latest 2 suicides were both under the age of 30. So I still think we have a mental health crisis in this county. And while I appreciate Motherlode Views for actually doing a couple programs the past couple of years on mental health, I think we still need to do more. And I was very impressed when I went to Stanislaus County, and everywhere you went, every telephone pole, every fence had green ribbons on it. And it was really wonderful to see such an awareness. And I hope maybe next year our county could do a little more besides passing a resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Good morning.
Morning. I guess everybody knows who I am on the board. It's not necessary out here. And I can at least talk through this face mask, not the My Pillow one. It muffles my words. Okay, I read, already voted, not quite yet. Afterwards, I will vote when I get downstairs. I just read this last night, and I was glancing through it, and then I read the part where it said, small s / Ryan Campbell, Chair, Tuolumne County Fire Authority. That was for Measure V, and against, no arguments against Measure V was filed. Duh. Nobody even knew about this until May 4th. So you worked on this, Ryan Campbell, January, February, March, maybe not January because we had the new Board of Supervisors. So you put this together before May 4th, first open public meeting, and nobody even knew about it until we heard about it on Monday, May 4th. And you did this behind everybody's back. You shouldn't have done that. And then if, say, whatever happens tonight at 8 o'clock, whether it passes or not, if it does pass, there will be a rebuttal for me. It'll take me 2 or 3 weeks to write it out. And your legal department will be hit as well. And I will address it to them as well. The fact that, let's see, my time, there's a clock now. Okay, if you put this in here, what you're doing is when you swear an oath to the United States Constitution, not the Constitution, it's the United States, you said you would not, when you make a false statement, fraud, you did this against the people. You swear an oath to the people. We're the United States, not Nancy Pelosi, not Washington, D.C., not Gavin Newsom. His aunt is Nancy Pelosi. And then you make a fraudulent statement here. Well, that's a violation of the United States Code. You swore an oath you wouldn't do that. And there is a code there for the United. They all have codes. And we got 40. Okay. Fraud under the United States Code is Title 18, United States Code 1001. You swore an oath you wouldn't do that. Making fraudulent statements in here. In print, for God's sakes, you did it in print. That's also a violation of the Title Code, United States Code 1001. Can't do that. You swore an oath you wouldn't do that when you took your oath to the oath of office for this office, January 7th of 2019. So did Anaya Kirk. And then, let's see what else. And then you have, what I look at this smells like done. Smells. Thank you. Bye.
Okay, thank you. I don't know, does that warrant any? We did have public meetings from 2019 on in a variety of respects, so.
Right, I think you can have a short, very short response that
Yeah.
is not accurate information that's being presented.
Yeah. Well, I think that would suffice. It's not accurate. There were many public meetings, so. Okay, anyone else from the room that would like to speak? Okay, is there anyone on the phone lines that would like to make a public comment? All right. Okay, so we'll close the public comment, oral communications portion and go to staff reports. I see the auditor controller making a move.
I think today I'm going to be the register of voters. Just to clarify a few things that John said is that The announcement in requesting both arguments for and against was published in the Union Democrat as required by law. As Ryan kind of alluded to, in all of the meetings that the fire district, or at least the last couple meetings that the fire district had, we gave the dates, I gave the dates of when people could submit the pro and the con. So there was some information out there of writing the pro and the con, and only the pro was written. Okay, today is election day. There is one measure on the ballot. The county fire authority is having an election for a parcel tax. At 8 o'clock tonight, we will push the button to see what the results are. In the very first 2 weeks, we had lots of responses. The last couple weeks, not so many ballots are coming in. Right now, we're just teetering on about 37% of the public has voted as of today. And I hope we hit the 37. I'm getting a little optimistic here for the mail. So the only place to vote in person, if one wants to still vote in person today, is 2 South Green Street downstairs. We're open from this moment until 8 o'clock tonight. One can come in and vote. There are 8 different drop-off boxes, one at the Miwok Library, one at the Twain Hart Market, Willow Springs Clubhouse, the county, the Sonora Library, Columbia School, Roca Park, the Junction, Groveland Library. You can come drop off your ballots as long as you get there before 8 o'clock. At 8 o'clock, those ballot drop-off boxes will be locked by the community service people. Thank you, Brad, and his group of people. They've been wonderful to work with, and they've been picking up the ballots from the drop-off boxes since the beginning of the election. One can, like I said, one can come downstairs. There's also a drop-off box right outside this building if you don't want to come in the building, and there's a drop-off box right in front of the elections office. So if you have not voted and you want to vote, you have less than 10 hours to do that. If you want your voice to be heard, please vote and get your ballots to us. One can also mail their ballots today as long as it's postmarked today and we receive it by Friday. We highly recommend you use a drop-off box today instead of the post office, but the post office will work. Thank you, and everybody get out and vote.
Thank you. Other staff reports?
Good morning, Board. Dory Beats, Office of Emergency Services Coordinator. Quick update. OES this last week, with the help of multiple partners, Tuolumne County Sheriff, Tuolumne County Fire, Tuolumne County Animal Control, Tuolumne County GIS, CAL FIRE TCU, Sonora City Fire, American Red Cross, and the U.S. Forest Service Stanislaus, held a wildfire preparedness virtual town hall. We had 75 participants. The town hall was recorded, and you can find the recording as well as a copy of each of the presentations that were made during that event on our webpage at www.tuolumecounty.ca.gov/wildfire preparedness town hall. It was a great event. We want to thank all of our partners, and we will be doing another one in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Morning, Board. Just a quick update. A couple weeks ago, I came and said we got a gold medal in the zero emission vehicles through the GoBiz office, Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development. Well, they made it official and sent us an award certificate, and I wanted you guys each to have one, as well as County Council.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, Board. Chairman Campbell, Clay Brown, Tuolumne County Homeless Prevention. Wanted to give you an update on Camp Hope. I also wanted to quickly recognize a couple of instrumental people. So Camp Hope is, we were out there again last week, and we plan to go again this week. And we have taken, I believe, about 30 people off the property at this point. And yeah, it's working really well. I got a call from a hotel proprietor who just raved about the support that the clients are receiving at the different hotels and how amazing the team has been. So I just really wanted to talk for a second about some of the services and people that are instrumental in this work. So when someone leaves Camp Hope and they enter into a hotel, they go through sort of an extensive case management to find out all their needs. It could be mental health support, medical care, pet care. It could be housing support. Some people need new driver's license. And a majority of them really need a day to sleep and eat well. And it's amazing what happens in a couple of days with care and support like that. So I really wanted to recognize Resiliency Village and their team, Mark Dyken, Brenda Chapman, and Shelley for their amazing case management, care, and support of these folks, who always just treat them with great dignity and respect. We're also working with Chris Kahn, who works for the Refuge Recovery Center. He's a drug and alcohol counselor, and he's been working closely with both the Miwok Clinic and the Matheson Clinic to provide both detox services and addiction support. And that's also been an amazing recovery piece. Also working with behavioral health and mental health support, and also in addiction recovery and entering into sometimes rehabs. We also created a small pet program, and we have actually spayed one dog, and all the dogs and cats, or I believe all the dogs have received rabies vaccinations when they come in. And so we're working both with animal control. Dr. Wes Whitman has offered support, and then the Sierra Kennel Club is also supporting us and offering some care. So there's a really beautiful team wrapped around this, and they're working diligently hard nights and weekends when things come up. And I really wanted to recognize their hard work as the clients have also worked together to create their own support, but this team is really amazing. I just wanted you to know today. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Okay, are there any other staff reports? I don't see anybody jumping up, so we'll go ahead and close the staff reports. And we'll move on to our consent calendar. So we'll be pulling item 3 from consent. Ms. Ryan, would you please read items 1 and 2?
Approving the minutes from the June 1, 2021 meeting, and finding that a summary of ordinance numbers 3393, 3394, 3395, and 3396 were published June 5th, 2021 in the Union Democrat as required by law.
Okay, questions from the board? Comments? Any public comment on consent? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board for a motion.
I'll move on approving consent calendar.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion by Supervisor Kirk, second by Supervisor Goldenberg. Call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, motion passes 5-0. All right, so we pulled item 3 for further discussion, so would you please read item 3 for us?
Consideration of approving comments to Assemblymember Bigelow in support of the governor's proposal to invest $7 billion for broadband projects to close the digital divide.
Right.
Good morning, Liz
Great. Good
Peterson
morning.
with the County Administrator's Office. Good morning, Board. So this item was brought to our attention actually by Supervisor Half, who sits on the RCRC Board on behalf of Tuolumne County. Really, the governor has proposed in his May revised budget, which is for approval on June 15th, $7 billion of investments in broadband, various investments, and the California State Association of Counties, as well as the Rural County Representatives of California and other organizations who have combined to create the California Broadband Coalition, have all united because there is some pushback from some large utility providers, particularly AT&T, who is reaching out to lawmakers opposing the significant investment, particularly $4 billion of the $7 billion that is available or that the governor is making available for open access middle mile construction projects. AT&T is requesting that the budget be amended to allow the funding only be used to connect unserved households and support low-income communities. And what this California Broadband Coalition is saying is that this Open access middle mile network is believed to be the only long-term solution for universal broadband access and affordability statewide. So there is a draft letter for your board's consideration that basically requests Assemblymember Bigelow as our representative here, requesting that he support the governor's budget full $7 billion for broadband access. And I did work with Cole to kind of put some of the details of why this matters here to Tuolumne County that's in the draft letter.
Okay.
So thank you for writing this letter. I also wrote a letter, and I guess the letters crossed. And I like especially what your letter says in the third paragraph because it makes it personalized. And I think the board has my letters to both Bigelow and Borges in their packets. I want to stress some of the things that you said. This plan originated in the CSAC Broadband Committee, which I'm part of, and we made the big ask to the governor, and the governor indeed put, of the 8 million, of the 8 billion, he put 7 billion in the budget. Well, right now, it is not in our California budget, and it has until the 15th of this month, a few days, to get in the budget. Otherwise, it becomes a trailer bill. What's happening is lobbyists are slowing this process down. This is $7 billion. The governor's plan is $7 billion, $2 billion of which would be spent in the first year and $5 billion the second year. The watered down plan that the lobbyists want is $1 billion a year for 7 years. That would not use a lot of the federal monies. It would use California monies. So this, for so many reasons, this is wrong. We need to, I don't have right with me, but I have a sheet of paper for each board member to call not only Borges and Bigelow, but the leaders in the legislature. This is extremely important that it gets in the budget now and not later. What the incumbent ISPs and one that you mentioned particularly are wanting to do, they don't want to see this middle mile open access because this creates competition. They like having the monopoly. We can't allow that. So if you're hearing this at home, please call at least our representatives, Bigelow's office and Borges's office, and tell them that we want the broadband plan in the budget now. Okay, that's my case. So I don't feel passionate about this at all. Can you tell? What I would like to see is an incorporation of these two letters. I really like your third paragraph in here, and I'd like that to be inserted pretty much instead of my third paragraph. But I have some bullets in here that I really want to stay, and the rest of it. So if it's okay with the board, I'd like to work with whoever puts these two letters together for our chair to sign. Is that appropriate? Mm-hmm. Okay. Because there's good parts to both, and I'd like to really send a punch. All right, thanks.
So what's the time frame we're working under?
Well, we want to send this letter right away, right. And we want to call right away as much as we can to, I'm going to give you a handout after this meeting of who to call, and I don't have points that you can make. Hopefully you remembered what I've said today. The most important thing is it needs to be in the budget before the 15th, and it needs to be passed in the budget and not a trailer bill in August. It'll get watered down, and that's where it's headed right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about holding, our state representatives accountable for the promises that they made, that
right.
They would make broadband a priority. But then when you have these large, ISPs getting involved, then all of a sudden, it becomes a little less of a priority once the prospect of losing a monopoly.
The legislators are looking a little bought and paid for, I'm sorry to say.
But, that we have to act in the best interest of the people, and maybe that means breaking up some of these monopolies, and if that's what it takes, so be it. We need to provide better broadband opportunities for our communities.
That's right.
And and thank you very much for all of the work that you've done on this. I fully support this, and I would be fully supportive of you working with Liz and staff to draft this letter, tweak it, and then I'll be happy to sign it and support it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other comments or? Okay.
I was just going to echo what Supervisor Campbell just said. Supervisor Half has put a lot of effort into this, working with RCRC, and I just wanted you to know that I personally really appreciate your efforts. We've got many areas that are either underserved or unserved in the county, and we need to fix that, so thank you.
Yeah, Kath, Supervisor Half has done a tremendous amount of work, and I appreciate you for doing that. And I think the key point for me is, we may have broadband here, and what the large providers want to do, like she said, is the unserved and low income, but you may have broadband, but it doesn't mean you have good broadband. It doesn't mean you're able to do school, work from home, and so we want the best that we can get for our constituents. And I'm all about competition. And perhaps some of those legislators, maybe they should have another job like it was back in the beginning, where you work and you represent your constituents and you go back to your farm, and that's what happens when we get full-time politicians making their money off of conversation. So I'm all for competition. I'm all for getting the best that we can get for our constituents, and this is really a pivotal time, I think, in our broadband history with COVID and with the economy. I think really what we've seen the last year is a conversation come around broadband, which we probably wouldn't have seen for another decade or so. And it's right here, and now's the moment. So we need this as part of the budget, and we need to start. We need our legislators, and we need the people who are up in Sacramento doing what's best for the constituents they serve. So leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay. Other comments or okay?
Just echoing with the rest of the board, Supervisor Half, thank you for your advocacy and leadership on this. As we found out at the beginning of the pandemic, there's a lot of people in our county that do not have internet access. Remember that iconic photo, I think it was from our Merced colleagues, of the kids outside Taco Bell trying to get Wi-Fi to be able to do their schoolwork. And also not only trying to catch up to where a lot of the country is as a rural area, but plan for that internet of tomorrow, which I think this will provide that backbone to support, because we don't want to be constantly just trying to play catch up. We want to be a leader in this. So thank you for all your work in this.
Yeah, and thank you, Liz, for being the wordsmith and getting these things through. So what's the action before us?
So I'm looking for approval to send comments, and I think, based on what Supervisor Half said, looking for maybe your board's approval for her to work with me on drafting a letter, combining the two letters, and then for your signature, Chairman Campbell.
Okay, great. Is there any public comment? You would like to comment on that? Okay. Bring it back to the board. Do I have a motion to that effect?
Yes, I'd like to move on staff recommendation as amended.
Second.
And that was from Supervisor Brandon, second, right? Okay. So I have a motion by Supervisor Half, second by Supervisor Brandon. Call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes 5-0. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Okay, so now we'll talk to, I think Cole is up next. Right, okay. So I'll look to the board clerk. Would you please read item number 4?
Consideration of approving letter to proceed with Train Energy Development Project preliminary analysis.
Morning.
Good morning, board. Cole Prisabelli, your Director of Innovation and Business Assistance. This is the ongoing effort to try to find a way to use Tuolumne Public Power Agency power that we currently wheel out of town. Your board approved a CCA feasibility study, and that was one way that we could use this power. And this is hopefully another option inside a CCA or outside. And so essentially what we did is we put out an RFQ for what's called an ESCO. I can't remember the full acronym, but essentially it's an energy services company. Michael Day with Tran is here to help us today if there's any questions. But we did get 5 responses, But Tran's response was the only one that truly understood what we were looking for. A lot of time, ESCO agreements are about lights. What lights can we do to save some energy? What's the HVAC savings we can do? What grants are available for county administrations to change some of those energy requirements that are on their building? Well, we have a unique spot where we have TPPA power, which changes a lot of those agreements or ways to save money and energy. But what we're really after is TPPA and how we can utilize it for an economic development rate or a low income rate or really benefit the community other than this public benefit for county administrations. So before you is a letter of agreement, and this was 3 to 4 months of trying to figure out how we can appropriately go into contract with Tran Commercial. I'll have Michael explain it a little bit more, but in essence, the first phase of this, where Michael Day and Tran go out to find projects for us, there is no cost to the county. So we were having a hard time figuring out how do we make an agreement or sign a consulting project agreement without a cost. So we came up with this idea of a letter of agreement. And so if you have any kind of high-level questions about what we're up to, I'd be happy to answer. But if you have any project level, maybe Michael can give us a little bit of an explanation too, if you're open for that as well. May I invite Michael up before, or did you have some questions first?
I think we could. Yeah, let's talk to Michael.
Okay, come on up, Michael.
Hey, Michael. Good morning.
Supervisors, thank the staff. Thank you for having me up. I'm Michael Day. I'm with Train. Most people know of us as an air conditioning company, but we also do energy services contracting. My own background is I'm a recovering Navy nuclear reactor engineer, and I specialize, I'm a subject matter expert for North America on what are called advanced energy project development. And luckily, I live in Sacramento, so it's just, actually I live in El Dorado County, so it was a pleasant trip down in the morning, a lot better than having to go to some of the other places. What we try to do in my group is we look for energy projects that can fund themselves but have an additional use for a community. So for example, in Lake County, we have a community that is right in the middle of a high fire threat district. They didn't have a lot of money. So we're bringing in private investors. We're looking to put in a large solar photovoltaic array, a 25 million gallon water tank on top of a hill, another water tank at the bottom of the hill, and a hydro turbine. The project will pay for itself by making electricity, storing it in the form of pumped hydro up on top of the hill. But in case of a PSPS event, it can microgrid, and the lights will stay on in that community when the rest of the area goes dark. Or if there's a fire, we've got 25 million gallons of water sitting on top of a hill that can go into their fire mains. And actually, the whole pipeline down will be studded with fire hydrants, with dry hydrants, to provide them a barrier to protect their town. These are the types of things that we do, where we try to find something that's good for the customer on sort of the customer side of the meter, but also has a definable grid impact so it can be sold into the wholesale markets. The specific technology is specific to the individual location. You really never know until you start getting into it. The traditional ESCO process, you have a company like ours that comes in at no cost, and we do a preliminary analysis. And at the end of the preliminary analysis, we come back and we say, okay, here's what we found. Occasionally, we come back and say, sorry, there's nothing we can do here. And that would normally be the case for a place like Tuolumne. Because of TCPPA, your Tuolumne Public Power Authority power, your cost of power is so low that the energy savings can't pay for anything. And that's the basic model, where your savings makes the payments for your facilities upgrades. But there are some unusual opportunities for Tuolumne County to look at, things that could help some of your communities, that could help with economic development, and that's what we want to go looking at. At the end of the preliminary phase, we're going to come back and say, here's what we think we found, this is what it looks like going forward. And at that point, we'll define a project, we'll say about what we think it'll cost, we say about what we think the cash flow on it looks like, et cetera. And at that point, your board will have the opportunity to go forward or not go forward. If you don't go forward, that's fine. There's no cost. If you do go forward, we continue to develop it on our dime. And at the end of that middle period, during the development period, we're getting into getting the actual costs and everything else. So it's budget up front, and then we get hard costs. At the end of the development period, that second phase, we'll come back to you and we'll say either A, we weren't able to do what we thought we would, and we walk away with our tail between our legs. B, it met all of the objectives that we started out on the development cycle with, and you agree to go forward. Or C, we hit all the gates that we laid out at the start of that second phase, and then you say, we've changed our mind and we really don't want to go forward anymore. That's fine. You're not compelled to go into the final contract, but if you back out after we've done our development and we met our goals, then there's a termination fee that pays us for our engineering. So that's the basic process for energy services contracting. Because of some recent court decisions, primarily the Phil Mickelson case in San Diego, where the Fair Political Practices Commission found that anyone who does work for a public body without charging for it, unless they've been selected through an agreement like this, is considered a public employee. Nobody can get started on any of these projects until we get an agreement like this. And so that's kind of where we are. We think there are some exciting possibilities here. We're pleased and thankful that we were selected to be the partner, and we're eager to go look and see if there's something there and bring you back a report later.
All right.
Any
Great.
questions?
Yeah, any questions from the board?
Yeah, I've got one. The timeframes to work this out?
I'd say 3 to 4 months would be a reasonable time frame. There are some things that we can look at, just sort of looking at what you have here through TPPA and some of what we know from the energy markets in California. There are some things that we're thinking in the back of our head. But again, we've been pretty careful not to get started with any analysis until you gave us the direction to get started. So typically about 3 to 4 months. And that'll also put us in good position that if you do want to go forward, sometimes you can bring in federal grants to match up with the grant application deadlines that are coming out most likely in September, and another set this coming January.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions?
Yeah, thank you both for your work on this. Just a few questions related to what you were presenting there, because this does sound like a great deal. So my next question there would be, how does Train make its money from consulting? Most
of the time we find something that works for you and works for investors and works economically. And the ones where we can't are paid for by the ones that do. This is our form of advertising. Instead of buying, a suite at the Super Bowl, they hire people like me to go find projects. Most of the time, there's something there. And when you have a situation where you're getting, 2 cent public power plus 3 cents for distribution services, yeah, I'll find some. Yeah. Right? If we can't find something there's something drastically wrong.
Or I guess specifically, I'm curious, where does that come in? So if the 3 to 4 month consulting period is free and in the investment to see if there's a good idea there, how do we pay? Does this come out of a grant that might be gotten?
No. So what happens? It's a good question. So let's say that 4 months go by and it's late September and I come back to you and I say, I think your options are you can do this widget in this location, you can do this widget in this location, and these are the projects that we would like to do for you. So Train is a contractor. I'll give you an example from Hidden Valley Lake in Lake County. We're thinking that it's a $45 million project. It'll be paid for by an outside party. It's going to build this water tank and solar and hydro turbine. If you say yes to go into that, we build our profit into that $45 million that we end up selling to somebody else. We're a general contractor. When it's a $45 million project, it doesn't cost us $45 million to build it. We make money off of that. To get somebody to buy it on the backside, we have to make sure that what we're selling out of it makes sense, that it meets their desired returns, and that the tax equity flows and all the other parts that are inside of that. But at a basic level, we think that we can put something together that we can really sell to somebody else on your behalf and take part of it for ourselves.
Okay. And I think overall, we've got very forward-thinking leadership here in the county, looking at some really great ideas. Cole's an excellent example of that. I think planning for success in the future. We also have got a good memory. We've had a number of these kind of large projects that I think from predecessors of this board that there's mixed opinions on.
Okay.
So with that, I just wanted to ask, what's the termination fee if we decide at the end of this after more detail, and we didn't want to?
I'll interject just real quick because we don't have to concern ourselves with that yet, as we are just talking about this phase one. So essentially what we're doing is we're agreeing to Michael and Tran to just go look for projects to see if there's any, to that term, there, to see if there's any there. He could come back and just say there's nothing there. And we all wash our hands. Or he can come back with some projects and we still say, never mind, we don't want to do this. Only if he comes back and give us an idea and you guys say, yeah, let's move forward on it. That's the only time money starts to actually have to have a conversation. Right now, you're only agreeing that Michael can just go out there and look for a project.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
I thought it was after this that you might recover if we didn't choose one of the projects.
So you're giving me a hunting license.
Yes.
I'm going to come back and make you an offer for phase two. If you like that offer and you decide to go forward with phase two, there is an obligation that comes in, but that obligation only comes in if it meets the goals that we laid out after you decided to go into phase two, and then you change your mind and back out. So right now we're trying to bring you some projects in the future.
Mike, I really appreciate you presenting to us, and I think in that time too, I'd be very interested in at least I think the high line on the other municipal projects you've worked on.
Sure.
Just to be able to look at over that time period. But thank you for all your work on this, and you too, Cole.
Okay, great. Looking to see, is there any public comment? Anyone like to speak on this item? Okay, I just had one question for County Council. Has this letter to proceed been vetted through County Council?
It has, and also we were working on the phase two with Cole, so we're looking ahead, knowing where we're going, potentially, right? Yes.
All right, great. Okay, bring it back to the board. Any other comments, questions? Otherwise, I'll look for a motion.
I'll make a motion to consider or to approve a letter to proceed with Tran Energy development.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Supervisor Kirk, second by Supervisor Goldenberg. Call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so next we're going to speak about the Board of Forestry. Looking to Dory, you said do you need a minute? It's like 2 minutes? Okay, so we'll just take a 2-minute break and then start up again at 5. You need an extra? Yeah, we're going to take another break. She just needs to hand up. Okay, so if you're ready to go, then we'll go ahead and look to Board Clerk Ryan to read our item number 5.
Item number 5, discussion and presentation of draft comments to the Board of Forestry's proposed state fire safe regulations.
Good morning.
Good morning, Board. Dory Beats, Office of Emergency Services Coordinator, and I also have with me Dave Ruby, also Brian Bell, Blossom, Steve Gregory. I have quite a team here today to answer some questions if needed. Real quick, on April 23rd, 2021, the State Board of Forestry announced their proposed rulemaking for state minimum fire safe regulations 2021. officially signaling the commencement of the public comment period, which will close on June 22nd. We are going to do a few little introductions with respect to a background. And real quick, the purpose of the proposed action is to make amendments to the SRA fire safe regulations to address standards for fuel breaks and green belts, establish measures to preserve undeveloped ridge lines, establish standards for existing roads, fix areas of inconsistencies or conflicts, reflect modern definitions, firefighting equipment, and development patterns in California, and reorganize the regulations for improved compliance. I'm going to turn it over to Dave.
Yeah, I'm going to add a little bit of a timeline and figure out how we got to where we are today on this one. We first heard of this revised minimum state fire safe regulations kind of mid-February through the RCRC, and evidently the Board of Forestry dropped this draft of a proposed regulations dated February 8th of this year. Staff immediately started looking at it carefully to see what ways this differed from our current ordinances that look at development rules and specifications for our county, and we noted many very concerning facets to it. Your board heard initial concerns on the 12th of March. Staff at that time recommended sending a letter asking for an extension to the public review period to allow for further public input, and your board did so. Almost immediately after that date, the Board of Forestry released a new draft of the proposed regulations dated March 15th. Staff immediately pounced on that to review it further and see what was in it, if there were any changes. There were a lot of changes, but we still had many very, very strong concerns about it. Eventually, the Board of Forestry held their public hearing on March 22nd, 2021. Chair Campbell spoke on behalf of the county, and Rochelle Kellogg eloquently spoke to the concerns of the city of Sonora, among 20-odd other local agencies who voiced very strong concerns and reservations about aspects of the proposed rulemaking. But at the end of the meeting, the Board of Forestry voted 6-2 to move the draft forward as it was written to the Office of Administrative Law in Sacramento to start the 45-day public comment period for this rulemaking. The draft that the proposed state minimum fire safe regulations that was ultimately brought to the OAL for the public comment period actually had been modified a little bit further. So staff again reviewed this 68-page long draft and noted numerous inconsistencies, vague or potentially contradictory sections within this regulations, and a lot of other concerning stuff still. You need to know that key county staff, the people in this room included, have met on a couple of occasions with the Board of Forestry to seek clarification on details of these proposed regulations, meeting with them via teleconferences on May 6th as well as May 27th. But we still feel that there are a lot of inconsistencies and problems, and a lot of questions still remain outstanding with our review of this proposed piece of state law. A lot of other local agencies around the state and the RCRC share our concerns, and a number of them have taken the effort to draft really thoughtful proposed revisions to these regulations and check in with the OAL on that, as well as the Board of Forestry. Where we are right now is towards the end of that public comment period, 45 days, during which time the Board of Forestry has to compile any of the comments that come in regarding this rule, and then they have to respond to those comments. This comment period will close on June 22nd, 2021. We're hoping that with all the input from local agencies around the state, that they will consider maybe a revision to the rule as it sits on the table and going into another 45-day public comment period, but there is no guarantee that that will occur. So we need to make our thoughts known to them now, and we're here today to kind of walk you through some of the information behind these proposed regulations and some of the proposed impacts to different corners of the county. So Dory, maybe you can move us forward here.
Yeah, so real quick, as Dave said, multiple county staff from Community Development Department, Public Works, County Fire, GIS, CIO's office have been working on this. And we want to kind of walk you through what some of the impacts are. We're going to start out with a little bit of a visual look at those areas that would be potentially subject to the proposed regulations. And understanding what some of the concerns from the various county departments are as you review the draft comments. I will say that the draft comments were modeled after the Mono County letter and also with input with County Council and Santa Clara County was one of the other counties that submitted a letter. And RCRC and CSAC also have been working on this as well. And we've been in the loop with those comments to kind of combine something that would work for Tuolumne County. So I'll have Dave walk you through the visuals.
Thank you, Dory. Just going to go kind of build on this piece by piece. What you're seeing there is a picture of that county that we love the most, Tuolumne County. Next slide, please. That shaded area is the actual federal lands within the county that would encompass the U.S. Forest Service land, Bureau of Land Management land, Bureau of Reclamation land, and the Yosemite National Park. That area is not, these rules do not apply to that area at all. So federal law trumps this proposed state law on the in that zone. So as you can see, that is a huge chunk of the county kind of taken out of consideration. All right, next one. The city of Sonora just lit up. That is considered a LRA, or local responsibility area. Basically, it means that city takes care of itself with its own fire department. And that is the only LRA that we have in our county as far as I'm aware. Next one. Okay, that area that just came up shaded is what's considered the state responsibility area, or the SRA. Basically, that is the zone that CAL FIRE or any other agency, apart from federal or city, would have to heed the call to fight a fire. But these proposed rules apply to the SRA in our county. And next slide, please. Anything in the very high fire hazard severity zone that falls within an LRA. So as you can see with the, I guess that's orange. I'm colorblind, so I might need a little help from Dory on this. That orange zone is the currently mapped very high fire hazard severity zone within our county. If you're familiar with the geography of the county, it basically is everything above Chinese camp, and unfortunately in the areas where most of our folks live. So these rules apply to the SRA and the LRA in the very high fire hazard severity zones, as well as any part of the very high fire hazard severity zones as we understand it. So very concerning. In terms of impacts, I can speak to public works and engineering development concerns. It seems like philosophically and realistically, these regulations are kind of a de facto moratorium on growth in our county, in that they seek to limit or completely stop any additional growth or any putting of additional people in those areas of very high fire hazard severity zone. And it's quite logical. In the case of a fire, you don't want to have to evacuate as many people. And if you do, you want to be able to get them out as quickly and safely as possible. That has always been a goal of ours as well. And our current local ordinances for Title 11 road standards were vetted through the Board of Forestry in 2011 and again in 2016 to reflect their current standards at the time. But those standards now they're desiring to make them even more stringent. And those additional stringencies will have further impacts to growth in our county. We are also operating in a state environment where we have a housing crisis. We need more housing. Yet this runs completely contrary to that philosophy of us providing more housing and encouraging housing growth, when this discourages growth and wants to put a limit on growth, at least within the environment that we operate within here in Tuolumne County. On a realistic level, we would need to update a number of our local ordinances that this would touch. That would include pretty much all of our Title 11 road standards. It would include sections of Titles 12, 15, and 17 of our local ordinances. And this is an unfunded mandate, so we'd have to do that work without any recompense for it. But it's very important that, once the state law is adopted in whatever form it takes, we need to kind of get in line with that. We can't really have two sets of road development laws for our county, one for one area and one for another. It makes the review very hard to do, and it could be misconstrued as, or it could be construed as unequitable. So that bears some thought. Certainly there would be a requirement of new road standards, and a lot of what this is pushing is secondary routes in and out of areas that are kind of buttonholed by cul-de-sacs. The goal being that nobody gets you have more than one option to get out of your neighborhood in the case of an emergency. And for years and years, we've looked for that kind of geometrics in our new projects. We've looked for opportunities to encourage that, but this makes it even more stringent than ever before.
And just to kind of jump on that, the way they're defining cul-de-sac is different than what most people would define a cul-de-sac. If I say cul-de-sac, people generally would think of, a flat cookie cutter valley development with, 1,500 units, and then you have a little offshoot with a bulb at the end of it that has maybe 20 or so houses. The way they're defining a cul-de-sac would include something like Cedar Ridge, Ponderosa Hills, Pine Mountain Lake. These types of developments would be considered cul-de-sac developments.
They look at it in accumulative terms. So at what point do you not have a second way out? So in some situations you would look at entire portions of the county, such as anybody that lives on Lions Bald Mountain Road, for instance, beyond Greenlee Road. There's no official second road out through there that's public and open. So that entire enclave out that way is considered a cul-de-sac, and it's several miles long. That's the kind of situation in development that these rules are seeking to eliminate in the future. So there are also other aspects of the rule in terms of roads, an existing road network system where it places a lot of responsibility on upgrading the road on anyone who seeks to get to build any new construction. And the rules are a little hazy. We've asked them for some clarification on this, and we've gotten some contradictory responses from the Board of Forestry. So I'm not sure how to lay that at the feet of your board, except to say that it's still very hazy and we're not comfortable with what we've heard. So we've sought further clarification, and we haven't really received anything that helped us feel confident in going forward with that information. And one other concern that we have, I think, and it's hard to articulate, but we have concern that these proposed road regulations could be sort of weaponized, if you will, by the insurance industry to eliminate coverage for folks who live on roads that, by no fault of their own, are substandard. We haven't heard any real rumblings to that, but there was an article in the New York Times earlier this week that spoke to that, and how the California State Insurance Commissioner was supportive of some of these proposed legislations, I assume this one included, which discourage growth in high fire risk areas. what are those areas in the county, you ask? Looking at our mapping that's before you, that's our very high fire hazard severity zone. And when we apply the maximum cul-de-sac length rule that is built into these regulations, and this is the best worst case scenario, if you will, because it actually makes shorter and shorter cul-de-sacs allowable by the smaller the lot size adjacent to the road, the smaller the shorter the cul-de-sac is allowed to be because of land density calculations they've submitted. But go ahead, Dory. Those blotchy red areas there that you see are pretty much all the areas that in our county, a very rough calculation, it could actually be worse, mind you, of areas which would not be allowed to have any further subdivision of land that would build new streets. So if you had a 20-acre parcel, let's say, and you wanted to subdivide that, build a nice little street to access it, if it was in one of those areas there, by our very rough calculations and looking at our existing road network, we'd have to say no. It would be illegal to build any further roads in those areas. So there are economic ramifications from that, as you all can imagine. We don't know what those are at this point in time, but it's staggering. And it also extends to commercial and industrial developments as well. Anything basically that would increase the land use density or land use intensity. So those are the current concerns that I bring to the table before you, but we have more.
Yes. And Brian, did you want to come up? So Quincy Elliott could not make it today, but she too has concerns specific to Community Development Department, and Brian is here to fill her spot. So.
Well, I'll do my best to fill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Obviously, along with our colleagues in Public Works and Engineering Development, we have some concerns, outstanding questions, and relative unknowns associated with these new regulations. As currently understood from the Board of Forestry, the new standards will not be triggered on parcels that have conditions applied as part of an approved map that were enacted prior to the enactment of these new regulations. So we do have, that was a clarification that we did obtain from the Board of Forestry in one of our previous meetings. How far that goes, again, like I said, is still somewhat of an unknown. So we're looking into those possibilities. It is currently unclear how the new regulations will apply to certificates of compliance for parcels. Any of those parcels that have been approved that were given certificates of compliance that did not necessarily address these types of regulations, how will those be affected moving forward? The proposed regulations do have the potential to slow the development review process and directly affect the resources of our local fire authority to enforce these regulations. As Dave alluded to, there is a whole nother level of unfunded regulation that we're going to be required to look at, review, and ensure we're in compliance with law. The setback regulations that are in these standards will not be possible on a large percentage of parcels. And to become compliant, the structures will have to have some additional levels of hardening, well beyond what the California Building Code requires for wildland-urban interface construction. The details of that are not spelled out in the regulations. It simply identifies they should exceed a standard, but give no direction on what exceeding that standard should look like. So we are definitely having conversations on our side to come up with reasonable items that may be able to be utilized by folks with less of a cost burden, but nonetheless an increased cost burden beyond what they normally would have had to incur. The economic impacts of these regulations, of course, do not just affect property owners, but they do affect the county funds as well as other agencies that have long-range projection of development in communities in their future funding and planning goals. As we all know, various agencies will look to the future in doing their 5 or 10-year plans, and they count on certain areas to be developed or certain areas to be considered when they make those long-range plans. And of course, these regulations do drastically affect how some of that can be obtained. And then currently the language does not clearly identify how or if a use permit will trigger the regulations. An increase in density under a use permit could potentially trigger all new regulations, meaning that any type of expansion or use of an existing commercial or industry facility that needs a use permit to expand its operations and provide for a better product or better service could be on the hook for these new regulations, which might make it financially infeasible to even expand their business or provide a better service. CDD feels that if a use permit is required for a use consistent with the land use maps, that the regulations should not be triggered. And that is one of our other great concerns in trying to help the constituents here. And that's all I have unless you have any questions for me.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And I just wanted to say that, we've talked to representatives from the Board of Forestry a number of times, and I'm grateful for that there seems to be, we've set up a line of communications now that's better. It would have been nice to have a heads up on this before February because this was a surprise to all of us that these regulations were coming down. And I think we would have been good partners in drafting this and kind of avoiding some of these concerns, but, spilt milk. But going forward, we're grateful for the kind of communication that we have had. The thing that concerns me, though, is that despite this communication, if you look at the draft that you've provided to us today compared to what was in the draft from, February, very little substantive change. It's mostly technical elements that have been changed, and it doesn't really address this issue of, what happens if you have a half-acre parcel with the setback restrictions. Essentially, you can't build. What happens if you live on a substandard road? Do you have to pay for that road to be improved? It makes essentially minor development projects into cost prohibitive development projects, and that's the origin of. And you had mentioned that this is a de facto ban on residential and commercial development in Tuolumne County, and that's what it comes from. Is that it doesn't technically say you can't develop the property that you own, but it imposes restrictions that are so stringent that the costs would far outweigh any kind of benefit that you could possibly obtain from that. So that's kind of where we're at right now. And what are you're looking for direction from the board on how to respond to these? What are you looking for today?
And just real quick, we just have a couple more slides specific, and I can speak. I know that Steve Gregory is in the room to answer any technical questions, but on the fire side of it, there will definitely be some impacts as far as inspection authority. But one of the biggest questions has to do with the section dealing with water supply and what that will mean, definitely in our community where we have a limited water supply for future development, and what that would mean for those individuals who would want to build. And so we've included that in here as a concern, as well as many of the other agencies, whether it's, community development, public works, roads, fire, just that there's some ambiguity in the definition that leaves, some areas just kind of us in flux about, the interpretation, I guess. I know that Quincy is very vocal about that and her concerns about that as well. So really, real quick, the next steps is to review and consider the draft comment letter as presented. Again, this was based on a letter from Mono County in conjunction with all of us, including County Council, to review. But CSAC, RCRC, Santa Clara County, amongst others, all have contributed to, many of the arguments, because they are very similar in some communities and counties throughout the state. But to direct us to make any changes to that draft letter based on anything you've heard, and then taking this forward when you take it to read it, we would come back next week and provide, additional information or injects from your comments to a final draft letter that we would approve next Tuesday on the 15th. And then on the 22nd, which is the comment deadline, they will be holding their actual Board of Forestry meeting where public comments will be allowed, and we would hope that the board chair or delegate participate in that particular meeting as well. So,
okay, and then we have formally invited representatives from the Board of Forestry to come view our county, and so we're hoping that we can get some face-to-face communication and give them a tour of some of our developments and the unique challenges that Tuolumne County faces, and frankly, all of the good work that Tuolumne County has already done to achieve this goal that I think that we can agree on the overarching goal that the Board of Forestry is trying to achieve, which is to make this a fire-safe community.
Yes.
I think it's just the how to go about doing that.
Yes.
That we're having the issue with.
Yes. So Dave Ruby, Brian Bell, Blossom Scott Heim, Steve Greger, and I are here and available to answer any specific questions you might have about some areas that we've read in the current proposed regulations.
Okay. Any questions from the board? Yes, Supervisor Half.
I really like the draft letter that you put together, in as much as I've been able to read it. And, I put out a call to the public also. And so I'm wondering if this draft can be published somewhere where the public can also read it?
Yes, my apologies. It was uploaded yesterday, but it didn't get pushed out, so it will be uploaded so the public can access it as well as the presentation.
So where can the public find it?
They will find it on the agenda packet. Yep.
In the final documents? Okay.
So when folks go to the agenda for today, it'll be in the final approved documents. So if they go open the agenda, it'll be there.
Okay, thank you.
Quick question, a few comments. On the PowerPoint you guys presented, pictures are worth 1,000 words. Are we giving that to the State Board of Forestry as well? Because I see we have a draft letter, but can we incorporate some of those graphs into
Yes,
the letter?
absolutely. We can attach that to
Okay.
the draft comments.
So
So
we
we'll
can-
have that ready for next week as well as a part of the backup, the attachments to the comment letter.
Okay. And, I know we're rushed for time, but something that comes to mind, Warren Buffett says, don't invest in something you can't understand. I feel like with this, there's a lot of unknowns, and we can't implement policies that aren't clear. And we know where the state's headed, and we're just trying to have the best conversations we can moving forward. I've been some part of those conversations. It's very frustrating when there's a lot of, I don't know, look into it, hadn't thought about that. And that's why it's so critical that we get this draft to them and that we put it in writing so that they can think about it and they can hopefully reverse course. But I got a lot of issues with it. It's almost kind of like eminent domain. If you close some of these things down in the future to where people can't develop or they can't build their homes or they have, ideas for their kids in the future, you basically took their ability, their property rights. And so, like Supervisor Campbell said, we all have the same, our number one priority as a board, and it has been for years, and I believe it will be for the future, is fire safety. But we have to do it out of a balanced approach, and we can't do these broad brush strokes. I know there's a lot of people in the community. We've been discussing this, putting some things online, and I know there's been some pushback, but our number one goal is to be fire safe. But, for all the people who have homes and they're comfortable and they don't have to worry about it, I'm looking out for the future generations and for the prosperity of our county. We want to do this right, but we don't want to be restricting people's property rights. And so I'll leave it at that. Thank you, guys.
Okay, any other questions, or else we'll go to public comment? Okay.
Just a couple of comments. Yeah, definitely, the fire aspects, I think we all understand, the need to do that. But, just that the Board of Forestry didn't, the timing of it, obviously, they're pushing something out and didn't reach out to the counties that were most affected, especially, the ones that had the highest fire danger problems, and we're working on issues. And so really appreciate your guys' work in analyzing. There's a lot here, to digest, and so we need to do our part and go through this. But thank you for all the work that everyone has done on this.
Thank you.
Okay.
Along with my colleagues, I also posted asking for comment. We ended up getting so many letters from Tuolumne County sent in that they called us, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Which is fantastic because this could have a huge impact. From my understanding, what we face, especially with our road situation in a rural county, is dire right now. Something around a $30 million budget, I think, is our road maintenance fund for the next 20 years. Get on me, Blossom, if that's not correct, but about a $280 million liability. And what this ends up doing is cutting our knees out from under us in trying to generate any economic development revenue housing for the workforce that we need to keep our economy going. It'll probably have an impact, I'm sure, on permitting fees and funds that we're getting from property taxes, and makes it even more of a challenge to be able to address the fire safety of our area. I think we're doing some great efforts right now. Certainly, I think this board's given direction on vegetation management in trying to work on improving our roads of public works and trying new ways for that. We've been working on fire inspections, looking at code compliance officers. I mean, really taking steps on this, and yet this would potentially put many of those things on halt while we have to then comply with this another unfunded mandate to basically conform all of our codes to the states. That doesn't solve anyone's issues. I like the part in here about the environmental justice of it, because what this will lead to is Tuolumne County being only a place for a select few wealthy people to be able to live, and not a place for most of us. And whether intentional or unintentional, it makes the Sierra area unviable, most of it, for building, for new construction, for any type of business growth, which is a really terrible thing. I hope they do take our invite to come up here and see the situation firsthand, because I do agree with Chairman Campbell. I think we have a shared goal. The goal of this, and on paper, makes sense, I get it. It's fire safety. That is one of the top issues that we face here. But the unintended consequences of this, to use a bad metaphor, and we needed a chainsaw approach that was targeted but aggressive, right? And this is like trying to clear fuel breaks with a bomb. You can't control where the impacts are in all the other areas that we're working on. Hopefully they'll come up, they'll be able to see this. As it is right now, it seems poorly executed and unilateral. And we know that they truncated the time for public comment to legal minimums. That is not a good starting point to, I think, make such a sweeping piece of legislation. I would just finish in recommending that we ask all of our community partners, if we have not yet, including the Chambers of Commerce, the realtors, Business Council, and everybody, if they'd be willing to sign on to really show a broad base of support here. Habitat for Humanity, I mean, really anybody that has a stake in this over the next couple of weeks, and offer them to join into this letter. And also including, I think, since the state is making such, at least a lot of talk about housing being such a critical issue, talk about the TCAR recent report that was released on housing availability. Anything we can do to show, I think, that we have a unique situation here in particular, if there's any type of exemption potential, because we face housing prices that are for fairly wealthy areas with a very low median income. I know that land use was mentioned. But not only that, we have almost no vacancies for rentals, very few for sale, and they may not realize just how severe that is in Tuolumne County. With that, this is extremely comprehensive. I really appreciate that it's trying to take their language and improve it in a way that will work for Tuolumne County, instead of us just saying no, because we do want to be good partners in this. And I'm sure this took an immense amount of time across many, many departments. So thank you all for all of your work on this.
Okay, is there any public comment? Anyone like to speak on this? Okay, we don't have anyone on the phones. Okay, great. I'll bring it back to the board. And I'll just say real quick that one thing that the goal here, we talked about this quite a bit, you can't just complain about regulations, without offering a solution. And so that's what we try to do here is, we restate the actual language in the provisions and then offer an alternative. And if that alternative is not accepted, offer another alternative. And you guys put a lot of work into it, drafting those alternatives. And you hit, I had a whole list of things I wanted to hit, and I don't really need to go over that because it's all covered in the letter. So I really appreciate that. And thank you very much for all your work. If there's no other questions or comment, I'll look for a motion on this.
Make a motion to send the draft comments to the Board of Forestry's proposed state fire safe regulation.
Okay, do I have a second?
And I'd like to second that.
Okay, motion by Supervisor Kirk, second by Supervisor Half. Call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll read, so I'll look to the board clerk to move us on to our, to item 6.
As the Tuolumne County Public Power Agency, consideration of approving fiscal year 2020-2021 year-end budget adjustments for the Tuolumne Public Power Agency for approval required.
Okay, so we'll recess as the Tuolumne County Board of Supervisors and reconvene as the Tuolumne County Public Power Agency. All right.
Thank you.
Morning, Liz.
Good morning. I'm Liz Peterson, the TPPA coordinator. Thank you, board, for. Yeah. So we don't often with TPPA come to your board with budget adjustments throughout the year, but here I am today because creating the budget for TPPA at the beginning of each fiscal year requires consideration of a variety of factors. Most notably, it's our 3 main costs that TPPA pays and then passes on to its members. And those are the costs to use PG&E's infrastructure, the cost to receive power from WAPA, the federal entity that manages the power at New Melones, and then the costs from Cal ISO, who are the ones who schedule the power to make sure the power is on the lines when we need it. So when developing the rate, and that's per kilowatt hour, that our members pay or will pay, TPPA staff has to estimate those costs from those 3 main providers. And based on any potential increases in consumption from TPPA members, as well as any other external factors outside TPPA's control. Drought is a huge one, so that affects potentially what how power is generated at Melones and therefore the allocation that we get or the costs that we pay. Variety of other factors. Another one being PSPS events. This has been a new one for TPPAs. We've tried to estimate our costs from Cal ISO. So as we have PSPS events, our scheduling costs to make sure there's power on the lines when we need it, those costs have increased dramatically, particularly last year. So for fiscal year 2021, all 3 of TPPA's main costs were underestimated. And as I mentioned, PSPS events being one, but also due to unexpected increases in consumption from some of TPPA's members. That's another factor that we have to weigh in when we're developing the rate, is what do we anticipate our members are going to use for the year. And so that includes any new potential meters that members might have that they're going to want to convert from PG&E to TIPA, as well as any new construction, for example, say a new jail, or any other construction that might be going on with our members. So all that to say is that as a result of all of these higher than anticipated expenses, TPPA staff is requesting your board pull $525,000 from the TPPA contingencies to cover costs for the remainder of the year. I do want to let your board know that our monthly bills that we send to WAPA for these 3 costs are somewhere in the range of 200,000 or so every month. So $525,000 is about 2 months of cost. So it looks maybe like a high number, but it's a pretty standard amount that we work with in TPPA. So I'm requesting that your board pull $525,000 from contingencies to cover costs for the remainder of this year. And then when we come to your board next week, as a part of all of the budget, recommended budget, TPPA's budget is going to be in that conversation as well. We will be putting that $525,000 back into contingencies next year so that our members will be repaying that back into the contingency fund, if that makes sense. So making sure that contingencies are fully restored next year. So I'm asking your board to increase appropriations in the PG&E line item by $175,000, in the WAPA line by $125,000, and in the Cal ISO line by $225,000, and then reducing contingencies by $525,000. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, any questions?
This may be late. Do we need to reconvene as the TPPA board for this?
We did.
I think he did that.
Did he?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just totally missed that.
It's okay. Okay, any public comment? Okay, bring it back to the board. Any other comments or questions?
Yeah. I did have one question. You mentioned the jail and the courthouse. So were those largely the unanticipated expenses? Was there, I would have expected over that time, it would have probably dropped, you know, for example, the schools being closed for a long period. Were there any other notable?
The Tuolumne Band of Miwok Indians actually had a handful of meters when they first joined TPPA. Not all of their meters were on TPPA for some contracts that they had with PG&E that they had to sort of wrap up. So it was actually mainly that a handful of their meters now are on TPPA. The jail has been a nominal increase because we do still have to pay some utilities at the existing jail as well as the new, but because it is so much more energy efficient, it's not as significant as maybe you might expect, but primarily it's the Band of Miwok Indians.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Liz. I mean, your memo made it clear. We have to balance the budget, and then I like that they're going to fix it next go around. So with that, I'm fine with making a motion to approve the 2021 year-end budget adjustments for the Tuolumne Public Power Agency.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion by Supervisor Kirk, second by Supervisor Brandon. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes 5-0. All right, so we have an 11 o'clock appointment that we need to get set up for, so we'll take a break. We'll reconvene at 11 o'clock. Oh, I'm sorry, and we will adjourn as the Tuolumne County Public Power Agency, reconvene as the Board of Supervisors, and we'll break until 11 o'clock. All right, good morning again. Welcome back to the meeting of the Tuolumne County Board of Supervisors. Where we left, we were going to approach our 11 a.m. appointment, so I'll look to the board clerk to read that for us today.
Presentation from the National Disaster Resilience Competition Team regarding a status update on the 3 pillars encompassing this grant.
Okay, good morning, Mo. Anything new happening today with respect to National Disaster Resiliency?
Just a few things, as always. So good morning, Board of Supervisors. Today, the core team will be here in person. So Marie Benich from U.S. Forest Service and I here. And then we have 3 panelists that will be joining us: Patrick Talbot, Sue Naramore, Stan Kiesling, actually 4, and then Angie Every from Sierra Nevada Conservancy. Will be making a presentation to your board and really updating you on the 3 pillars that encompass the National Disaster Resiliency grant. So with that, at this time, I'll turn it over to Patrick Talbot, who will start us off in the presentation.
Good morning. Are you with us, Patrick?
Thank you, Mo.
Are you welcome?
I am. Good morning, and thank you, Mo, for that introduction. It's good to be back before the board and provide an overview of the NDR grant. I wanted to give a brief overview of the grant for those board members who might be new. The NDR grant is rooted in the Community Development Block Grant Program. The Department of Housing and Urban Development administers the annual CDBG program, which was established by the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974. Actually, the county has been very successful in utilizing these annual funds for the communities in the county. HUD also administers the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Funding. The disaster recovery funding was authorized under the SATFID Act of 1988. The act allows Congress to issue specific funding for disaster recovery efforts based on unmet recovery need remaining after FEMA and other response activities are completed. In 2010, HUD wanted to do a demonstration program. They wanted to demonstrate that DR funding could be used to provide more resilience in communities. So they issued a NOFA for $1 billion. and made it available to all jurisdictions in the United States. The partners below, shown below, collaborated together to put an application to HUD for $114 million. And that was to establish the Community and Watershed Resilience Program, CWRP, which is made up of 3 separate pillars. HCD was successful in the application award, and HUD awarded $70 million for CWRP activities. California is one of 13 NDR recipients. We're the only recipient that has a wildfire disaster. And we're the only recipient in the western part of the United States. You could go to the next slide, please. So the goal of the CWRP is to mitigate impacts of the 2013 rimfire disaster and increase community protections and resilience. The timeline for the CWRP funding was the application process, which was in 2014-15. The HUD award came in 2016. And the actual grant agreement was executed in 2017. All the pillar grant agreements were in place in 2017 and work started at that time. All funds must be expended by September 2023. In terms of coordination, each of the pillars has a coordination team that works to make sure that the activities get implemented. In addition, the core team meets regularly to oversee all 3 pillars and to make sure that the grant moves forward with all the activities. The CWRP pillar activities were very conceptual. So a lot of planning and feasibility work needed to be done prior to actually getting the project started. So at this point, we're making good progress, and I'm pretty much done with the overview, so I can turn it over to Maureen and Stan and Maria to provide more specifics.
Great. Thank you, Patrick. So the first step on, as far as the pillars, we placed it first as the Community Resiliency Center, and your board is, and I think the community is well aware of this pillar. The lead for this project is the county, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time. What I want to do is just go through these next few slides pretty quickly because I think you're familiar with what's going on. In phase 1 of the Community Resiliency Center, the county staff went through kind of the following kind of tasks. And we hired Lionakis architects to assist us with the programming document. And then from there, we were able to get an idea of what the community wanted. What did resiliency mean for them? And what did they wanted to see in the buildings? From that, then we worked on the schematic design of the facility. And once we had that and we were able to do some solicitation for properties, we then hired Ascent Environmental to do our environmental studies for the proposed sites. From that, a phase 1 summary report was submitted to HCD to really look at what we've accomplished, where we wanted to, and then where we wanted to go. We also, on the 2 parcels that we then narrowed it down to, one in Groveland and one in Tuolumne, we did geotech services on those properties to see what was underneath the ground and what we can expect and what changes we need to make to the design to make sure that the buildings were sustainable and stable. Next, we did an appraisal of the properties before we were finally able to commit to those properties and offer agreements to people in order for us to purchase the properties. It was at the end of phase 1, which was in June of 2020. At that time, talked to the state in regards to, we had a little bit of gap in financing at that point in time, and we were really committed to having 2 community resiliency centers in Tuolumne County. again, one in Groveland, one in Tuolumne. And it was really thankful to the Board of Supervisors who went up and really advocated on behalf of the county that we were really committed to having two facilities. And I thank HCD, again, Partnerships and Collaboration, who came up with a solution for us, and they were able to grant us an additional $5 million through the national, through the neighborhood stabilization program. And so that was wonderful from that. We then, after June, moved on to phase 2 of the project. A little more excitement in this one, and we actually get to see something in the ground. So in phase 2, again, we purchased the property with Lionakis. We finished the plans and specifications. It went through the review process. We were able to obtain the permits for that, and we also were able to obtain various consulting services. So, for example, the neighborhood stabilization program, we were able to get consultants on to assist with all the grant requirements that we had for that. We were able to hire Roebland Construction Management for the management of the project itself. We hired a construction biologist, and the most important part is we were able to go out and solicit bids for the construction contract and execute a contract with Boyer Construction to complete the project. As you well know, and we're going to celebrate today, construction began on both facilities May 3rd. We are doing the groundbreaking today for the Tuolumne CRC, and then July 13th for the Groveland CRC. It will take approximately 14 months to complete these projects. So we're anticipating probably the end of July, assuming that we get some, what the assumption in there is that there will be rain eventually sometime this winter, and we will have some rain dates scheduled into that. So we're thinking about the end of July to complete the project. And occupancy and programs started probably August or September, sometime in that part, but we'll be done with the project at that point in time. The next slide that you see before you just talks about during the phase 1 and phase 2, what we had available to us and what we have allocated out as far as contractually for this project. The bulk of the grant funds that we have for this project will be spent on the construction of the facilities, and so that's where we are with the project. At the end of the presentation, I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. At this point in time, I'll turn it on over to either Angie or Stan, who will talk about the second pillar in our 3 pillars, and that's the Biomass Utilization Fund.
I'll go next. Hey, good morning, board members. My name is Angela Avery. I'm the Executive Officer of the Sierra Nevada Conservancy. Before you hear the details of the Biomass Utilization Fund and the Forest and Watershed Health Pillar, I just wanted to introduce SNC and remind and share with those of you who are new the role that SNC has played in this particular project. So Sierra Nevada Conservancy is a state conservancy under California Natural Resources Agency. We really focus on the triple bottom line, so the environmental, economic, and social well-being of the counties and the region that we serve. In our role as project manager for this particular project, we assist HCD in making sure that the projects are completed on time and that community members are informed and engaged in the process. I think that 2020 really showed the value and importance of this particular program. From our perspective, it's more apparent now than it ever has been that we need to invest in our forests to prevent another run fire, to protect our communities, and really the many services that our forests provide. We also believe, from the SNC's perspective, and I think this project perspective as well, that expanding our region's wood processing and biomass utilization infrastructure is key to ensuring that we can complete the necessary forest health treatments while providing good job opportunities for residents. Despite a few pandemic setbacks, we've been really happy with the progress on both the Forest and Watershed Health and the Biomass Utilization Fund pillars so far. You'll hear more about this from Maria in a few minutes, but under Forest Service leadership and in partnership with Yosemite Stanislaus Solutions, We've been exceeding initial targets for fuels reduction and forest restoration activities. And I hope you've all had an opportunity to get out on the ground and see all of the tremendous work that's been completed so far. I think it's fair to say the U.S. Forest Service is on track to easily complete all of the activities identified in the project and spend the remaining funds. And then about a year ago, under the Biomass Utilization Fund, we partnered with Rural Community Assistance Corporation to assist the core team in implementing the Biomass Utilization Fund. They've been an incredible partner and have taken the lead on working with businesses and entrepreneurs looking to develop business in Tuolumne County. We're excited to report that the core team has provided tentative approval to 2 projects here in Tuolumne County. Environmental review is currently underway on those projects and also on an additional proposed project. And we're feeling really confident that these projects will fit very well and complement other activities going on in Tuolumne County. I'm going to turn this over to Stan now, who can give you a little bit more detail, but thank you for the opportunity to be with you here today and to provide this update. And as Mo said, if you have questions for me, happy to answer them at the end of the presentation. Stan?
Thank you, Angie. Good morning, members of the board. It's a pleasure to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity to update you on the Biomass Utilization Fund. As Angie said, we are still assessing the feasibility of and working on vetting 3 businesses that we are pretty confident are going to make it to the finish line, but it's still a work in progress. You know, the BUF program started with a planning phase that included a BEC study that assessed the feedstock that would be available and that created some business models for potential business development under the BUF program. That feasibility study, after it was completed, then led us to issue basically a notice of fund availability and a request for proposals from various potential businesses. And that process I will get to in a second. The second phase of our project really is about developing a toolkit that can be used to replicate the work that we're doing. You know, there are numerous challenges that we've had to deal with and that we have been trying to work through. And a lot of work has gone into designing a program that can really meet the financial needs of businesses as they develop in the biomass arena. None of the businesses that we're working with are actually electrical generation and so you know, there are a number of fairly creative solutions that people have proposed for projects and that we are continuing to work with. We are providing some case studies about those businesses as well as part of the toolkit. So just go on to the next slide. In phase 2, we are also then working on the funding. And as Angie reported, 2 of the projects that we're working with have actually gone to the core committee, which does a first review and approval of projects and allows them to go forward. That's the first step, is really making sure that projects comply with the goals and outcomes designed in the overall program, and then they actually have to get financial approval from the Rural Community Assistance Corporation loan fund. And so we operate a fairly substantial loan fund across a pretty wide geography in the Western United States, rural parts of the Western United States. And we have a loan committee that reviews and approves projects. As you can see on this slide, the 3 projects that we are currently working with have a total financing need in excess of $30 million, of which approximately $18 million will come through the BUF program. But the other $12 million is both a combination of developer equity and other financing. And RCAC has been playing the role of really working with the proponents of these businesses to help them identify and secure the financing that they need. And frankly, none of them have crossed that finish line yet. So we're still in that process and trying to iron out those last details around financial structures. Combined, the three businesses will employ over 60 new folks in the county. We're excited that we are achieving that level of employment and feel that it'll be a great boost to the local economy. And that's actually ongoing jobs, not construction work. And then finally, we are in the process of environmental review. All three businesses have identified specific places where they would like to locate, and they have tentative agreements for the potential siting of their business at a location, which is subject to environmental review. And once that environmental review is completed, then they will move to the next phase of their project, which is securing all of their permits and completing the construction and development of their businesses. So finally, just to rehash the budget, so far in the feasibility analysis, there was approximately $172,000 spent. And, our toolkit work and other phase 2 planning work is budgeted at $1 million. You can see we're way underspending on that, and that's part of the reason that I'm projecting that our BUF financing is going to go up significantly from the $17,000 that are shown on this page. So again, I too would be happy to answer questions after we finish our presentation.
Good morning. I'm really happy to be here in person today. It's nice to see everybody. And it's really fun to come talk about this project because for the Forest Service, it's just been wonderful, frankly. It's been an opportunity for us to get a lot of money to really invest in the rimfire, and that's what we've done. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. As far as Angie alluded to, we will be exceeding our targets for the money that we were given, and we're really super excited about that because the more we can get down on the ground, that's what it's all about. So it was mentioned that the grant kind of was in place in 2017. We really didn't get started on the ground until 2019. You know, we had to adopt our NEPA documents. The way it worked out is we ended up adopting the 2 large NEPA EISs that we had done for restoration of the rim, recovery EIS, as well as the reforestation EIS. And that was done, and we could move forward in 2019. And so that's what we did. And of course, we initially started with fuels reduction work. Our number 1 priority out there in the rim, we said it from the beginning, is we will not be planting, we will not be reforesting areas that we have not treated fuels on. It's just, we know fires are going to be there. It's a fire landscape. They're going to be frequent, and we wanted to make sure that we were setting ourselves up for success in that long term. So that's been our number 1 priority. So as we see on this slide, we spent, well, through 2020, we'd spent over $14.2 million, but as of this year, we also awarded about another additional $4 million in contracts. And so we're doing a good job spending money and getting work done on the ground. And all 5 pillars are moving forward. The 1 pillar we probably had a little, the hardest one getting underway is actually the fuel breaks. And a couple reasons for that. The fuel breaks are outside of the rimfire footprint. And so we had to do NEPA on those, NEPA for Bureau of Land Management, NEPA for U.S. Forest Service, NEPA for HUD, and then we had to do CEQA for the private property and for the grant. So it takes time to get all that done, of course. And the nice thing about RIM 2, I didn't mention that the CEQA is actually exempted in the rimfire footprint. The governor did that right away, and so we don't have to do CEQA in the rim, and that, of course, saved us a tremendous amount of time to move forward with that. So right now with the fuel breaks, we are moving forward. We're going to submit a contract this week, finally, get that in, and the Forest Service will be covering Forest Service lands as well as Bureau of Land Management lands. We were hoping to do 1 contract that could cover all the land at one time, private property included. We were moved forward with the Good Neighbor Authority, the Wyden Authority. We had the agreements in place, and then looked nationally to see if it had ever been done, and guess what? It's never been done with a U.S. Forest Service contract. And so we kind of took a big step back, working with our partners, CAL FIRE. They've been fantastic, and they said, we'll take on that private land. And so they're currently working on their contracts, looking at what we're doing, making sure they're moving in the same direction. And so they're working on their contracts right now and hope to get those out here this summer also. So that's what's happening. And then again, lots of private land up there. SPI has actually taken on the work on their land themselves. And so a lot of things are starting to happen up there, which is exciting for us. Next slide. So like we said, the range project, so there's 5 parts of our pillar. There's reforestation, there's fuels reduction, there's range infrastructure improvement, there's fuel breaks, and there's noxious weed eradication. So with the range, we've partnered with the CCC, and it's been a tremendously successful partnership. They have a crew that's come down and worked with us. They're fence builders, and they've just done a fantastic job. And so they've accomplished much of that work out on the ground. We've also done contracts for fencing too, for private contractors to do, and that's also been successful. But CCC has really stepped up and done a nice job for us, so we've been really impressed with that. We've also done 3 cattle guards and put in a corral, and those have all been done by private contractors. You put out to bid locally, and those folks got those bids. Like I said, an additional $4 million was awarded this year for different contracts, primarily fuels reduction. That's the most expensive thing we do out there, but also for planting, reforestation work, herbicide, site prep, and herbicide release. Next slide. So this is the budget that they were talking that everybody wants to go over, so we'll talk about that. It's a little bit different than what this shows because, again, we've expended some more funds. And so the actual remaining for the fuels reduction and the biomass removal component, there's only about $31,000, $32,000 left in that whole pot of money. So we've been hugely successful getting that work done. For noxious weeds, it's down to about $860,000. Range has stayed the same. We haven't done any new work this spring, but that's going to be happening here pretty quick. And then for reforestation, we're down to about $6 million. And again, fuel breaks, we're hoping to start spending here really quickly. Next slide. So I think what's important to note, this is what we've accomplished out there on the ground, the acres on the ground, and I wanted you to know what our targets were initially. And so for fuels reduction and biomass removal, our target was 4,600 acres. So in the end, we'll be accomplishing about 8,750 acres, so well exceeding that target. And we may do more. We're trying to be a little conservative with the money. We spent out that pot of money. We may use some of the reforestation money to do that work if we find that we have that money available to us. But we don't want to spend it yet. We have some time. So for reforestation, we've planted only about 2,000 acres, and that's a really unfortunate story. The problem with reforestation is COVID. We were ready to plant over 2,000 acres last year. COVID hit right at the time when planting was starting. We were bringing contractors in from Oregon who had just come from south of the border. So it just something that we decided we couldn't do safely for the community. And so we actually postponed planting. We're hoping to do fall planting, and it just didn't work out. We couldn't hold the seedlings over the summer in the conditions with 100-degree heat up at Miwok and PSPSs that shut off power, so we just couldn't do it. So it was really a bummer. We kind of lost that season last year. But this season, we did get planting, we did get trees in the ground, so that's exciting, and we will continue to do that. The hard thing with reforestation too is you have to order your trees about 1.5 years in advance, and so it's not something where you can just say, oh, we need extra trees, let's go get them. We are actually planting seed from this location, locally grown locations, and that's the seed that we grow seedlings and put in the ground. And so it's a little more difficult than I wish it was. But we're still moving forward, and we intend, well, we will. So the 8,750 acres that we're doing for fuels reduction, that will all be planted. So that is our reforestation target, which you can see almost doubles our reforestation target. For noxious weeds, we've done a little over 3,000 acres to date. Our target is 3,500 acres. That's a challenging one because noxious weeds, they just keep going. But we're hitting it as hard as we can. We're focusing a lot up in the jawbone area because that's an area of really important deer habitat. So we're really trying to get rid of those noxious weeds that are taking over some of those areas. Rangeland infrastructure. We're moving forward with that. Again, we've almost accomplished all of our fencing work out there. Our target was 20 miles of fence. We're going to get most of that done this year with CCC. It's been fantastic. Some of that's changed a little bit. We were looking at 11 different items for infrastructure. Some things have been dropped. We did this grant went in 2016, so it was a long time ago. Conditions have changed. So one of the things that has changed is one of our permittees is just interested in building a corral that they originally did want to build. So if there's extra money there, we're looking at ways to spend it within that rangeland. But again, we have to do NEPA on all the projects we do. And we have to do NEPA with HUD, and so that can slow us down. So if we have extra money in these different pots, we can move them to the other pots if we want to, or feel like that's the best way to use the money. But we'll see. We're still moving forward with a bunch of range projects this summer, and next summer if we need the time. So the fuels expansion, the fuel breaks is the last project. Like I say, we're working on. It's really going to be hit hard. We hope to start this summer to finally move forward on U.S. Forest Service land as well as the BLM land that we're doing together. And then the CAL FIRE will be moving forward with their contract here coming up soon. So we've been talking to folks on the ground and really working with them to get that moving. So that's what's happening with fuel breaks. Thank you. And again, if you have any questions, we're here.
Great, thank you very much.
Patrick, were you going to finish up?
Okay. Was that the conclusion of the presentation, or did you have more?
The last slide just basically gives a nice summary of what we envision as success for the NDR grant. So basically all these different pillars support the county and provide a lot of future resilience for the citizens in the community. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
And then Supervisor Ryan, I would like to just conclude with one statement. One of our core team members is retiring in the next couple of weeks. And I just, on behalf of the rest of the NDRC team, would really like to thank her for all of her work on this project. And that's Maria, who just did the Forest and Watershed Health pillar, and has just been instrumental in making sure that that pillar moves forward, and that not only, as she just described to you, achieved the goals, but went beyond what was initially set out. And not only with NDRC, but Maria's been just a tremendous asset for Tuolumne County here and has worked on several different projects. One of the main ones, I think one that's was probably most interesting to her, and one I know she was really proud of, was she was the lead person who organized and shepherded the national tree all the way back to Washington, D.C. for Christmas one year. So that was really special. So on behalf of the NDRC team, thank you very much for all your efforts. We really appreciate it. And with that, that does conclude our presentation to you, and the core team is here to answer any questions you may have.
Well, thank you very much for that, and congratulations, Maria, and what a way to cap off a phenomenal career of public service to our public lands. Thank you so much for the work. Questions from the board? Any comments? Supervisor Goldenberg?
Thanks for an excellent presentation. Always good. 3 of us came on the board recently, so it's good for us to get a better understanding. Some of these areas I've had some involvement in. So I did have actually like one question from each of the 3 areas. On the resiliency centers, I know that we're looking at a multi-use. A number of organizations have kind of lined up for the spaces. I did get an inquiry just this last week from the arts community, Tuolumne County Arts, and they were very interested in doing some arts programs and wanted to know if that was a possibility. So.
Oh, absolutely, Supervisor Goldenberg. Just because we've signed partnership agreements with a few people, we are still, the community centers are all about, these buildings are not really government buildings. They're the community buildings, and what does the community want with them, and where are they going to take these buildings? I can't wait to find out, because it's really all about them. And so I'm so excited. The Arts Council did reach out to me also, and I just, please, for them, if they're listening, I am very sorry I haven't been able to get back to them. I've just been a little busy right now. But absolutely, we're interested in looking at all types of partnerships and bringing more services and programs that traditionally have been provided in downtown Sonora out to the public and out to where the residents live. And so that would be a wonderful partnership, I think,
Exactly.
in
Yeah,
those facilities.
That's really what they're looking to do, is
Yeah.
bring some arts out to the communities.
That would be great.
On the biomass, it seems like that one is the area that kind of got stalled off the most timeline-wise, or do we have any dangers of losing funding if we don't get these things, to the final approval stage and moving, towards construction?
Right. Patrick or Stan, you want to take that question?
Sure, I'll take it. Well, I have to say, Supervisor, that we are really happy that in the recent past, the Congress agreed to a one-year extension of the grant. And otherwise, we would have been, we were a little concerned about what our timeline was for completion of all of these projects. With that one-year extension, we're confident that all of them can reach the finish line well in advance of the time when they need to be completed.
That's excellent news and comforting to hear. Yes, because, there's just so much at stake. The last area was on the forest and watershed health. Recently, I had a tour that was put on by the Tuolumne River Trust, and we had some folks from CAL FIRE foresters that were on that. And so I got a good view of a number of things, including, thinning obnoxious weeds, planting, a little bit of fuel breaks, and yeah, obviously there's a lot going on there, and we kind of went a whole bunch of different areas, cutting across from Long Barn to Cherry Lake and down, and so it, just tremendous amount of good work. So thank you for all of that.
Welcome.
Go for it.
I'll be speaking later, but yeah, I mean, most of you guys touched on the points. I think the biomass is going to be interesting to see how that develops, just because there has to be some long-term feasibility there. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But Maria, what I heard you saying from all the partners is just great. It sounds like it's just collaboration. So I thank all the partners. Everybody's been a part of this process. And I overheard you say, yes, you were retiring, so congratulations. I'll be jealous because you'll probably be out hiking when I'm sitting behind two desks.
I hope so.
And then, Mo, I did have one question that just came to mind, and you may have already answered this, but I know with the schematics of the Tuolumne CRC, TPRD, we had a sit-down conversation on some of the looks and colors, and that's being implemented in the one being built, correct?
Right. So what Supervisor Kirk is talking about is there was some preliminary designs and schematics done for both CRCs, and at the time we held a community kind of meetings in both places. And at the time, Tuolumne really, there were a lot of folks that were looking at it and said, it really doesn't fit our community. It's a little too futuristic. It doesn't look like what we want. And so we set up a secondary meeting with the architects and a few people from the community and really talked about what their concerns were and what they were looking at as far as the materials for the building and what could we use. And it was really hard, some of the things that they suggested, because there was a whole series of requirements, one of which was we're in the urban interface, or the WUI, and so there were a lot of restrictions on types of plants and types of materials that we could use in order to make the building as safe as it needs to be, as far as resistant as much as possible to fires. And so from that meeting, we were able to look at the design standards that CRA has for, go back and look at them as far as for the township of Tuolumne, and really incorporate a lot of the suggestions that committee had.
Okay. I was just confirming because it had been off my mind for a while. But, so thank you for that.
Good question.
And thank you for the presentation, guys.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. This kind of brings us up to date a little bit better. And Maria, definitely congratulations on your retirement. And I do have a question for you. So you mentioned the rangeland fencing, and I'd like to know where that is in the county.
So a lot of it was infrastructure that was damaged. Well, all of it was infrastructure that was damaged in the rim fire. So it's within the rim fire, and different, like some of it was Well, it's throughout. It's hard to describe, but I can send you a map. Would probably be the best way to do it.
That'd be
But
great.
it was all burned up in the rim fire and damaged, and so that's what we're replacing out there.
Okay, great, thank you. And I'm not sure who this is a question for, but I'm a little confused. We've got a lot of biomass stuff going on, and there's one from Golden State Financing Authority that is through RCRC, and I'm not sure if that blends with this one or if it's separate. So can you kind of give me a distinction about all the biomass that are in the works?
Yes, Dan, do you want to take that one or do you want me to try to field it?
Well, I can. I do know that RCRC is working on trying to develop a very large pellet manufacturing facility that would be primarily focused on export, and that they, are also kind of moving that project forward as kind of simultaneously with ours. We do not have any actual direct connection with their project. The three projects that we are working on are much smaller in scale, but in fact, obviously the projects are all complementary in terms of using low and no value wood from the forest.
Yeah. Stan, can you just in general terms brief the board in regards to those three businesses, what types of products that they're going to be producing?
Sure. Actually, one of the businesses is actually manufacturing pellets also. However, is focused on retail supply in California. They are just finishing their feasibility study to demonstrate kind of what the demand is, and there continue to be federal tax credits for pellet stoves, and so they're pretty optimistic about how that goes forward. We have a second business that will be manufacturing biochar, which is essentially a product which can be used as an amendment to soil, and as a nutrient to soil and a remediation for soil, and has agricultural uses in that respect. It also has a property that allows it to mitigate methane gas emissions when it's mixed with both manure and also with compost. And there's a new state law around mitigating the methane and odor from composting in California. And they think that there's a good shot for them to do some work there as well. And then finally, the third business is a group that will basically manufacture posts and poles for agricultural uses. So small diameter logs, and then on the portions of those logs that are not adequate for their use as posts and poles, they will be also manufacturing bundles of firewood for basically the consumer market throughout California. It's actually a second operation for a business that exists in Oregon that has contracts with folks in California now and is looking to kind of minimize their transportation costs.
Great. Thank you very much for that. So then my next question is, where are we going to get all this fuel for 4 biomass plants? Is that being taken into consideration in the feasibility phase, at least for the 3 that are part of the NDRC? And I'm just a little worried.
Yeah. So certainly for our folks that are in the BUFF program, they're all focused on the forests in Tuolumne County and are expecting to get most of their supply. It is my understanding that this RCRC project will not be as constrained about where it sources material and will be looking to bring farm waste up to Tuolumne County in order to process it into pellets, as well as securing material from the forest. It's been a controversial. The whole question about the supply of biomass has been a controversial question for some time. The Beck Group study really was a very narrowly focused study, and people generally are much more confident in the supply of biomass. And frankly, the commitment that both the state and federal government are making to remediation of the forest and making the forest more resilient, people are pretty confident that will increase the supply as well.
So just a last comment. I know with the Master Stewardship Agreement and a lot of the forest thinning and the fire breaks that are being done right now, it's great. I'm just worried about several years from now. Hopefully the momentum will continue and we will continue to have grants or some kind of money that will bring in the forest product so that these biomass businesses remain viable. Thank you.
Supervisor, I just have to, I would just say that it's one of the big challenges about financing these businesses. And trying to look at and predict what that supply is, and given the nature of contracts for supply, it's just a real challenge. So we've been working pretty diligently to get comfortable with that question, and I think that we're, for the most part, that we're there in terms of our businesses anyway.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. This time I'll open it up to public comment. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak? Come on up. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, board. My name is Chuck LeCamp. I've been around a couple of years, and I started my career in the late 50s working for the Forest Service. One of the things that I'm very happy to see is the focus on biomass. It's very important, and it's a problem that goes back very close to 70 years. As the Forest Service 70 years ago began to have some monetary problems, they reduced a number of things. When I was a kid, and I was a kid, I'm 80, we used to dig erosion ditches. We used to get most of our money, and I'm from Oregon, but it's the Forest Service, and I'm not recognizing states. We used to get most of our money from building logging roads. One of the problems that's happened over the years was a reduction in services from the Forest Service in maintaining, thinning primarily, but also brush. And that's a huge problem today because we have so much brush that's infilled, and that brush is the intermediate layer that takes a ground fire and puts it into the trees. So when you talk about biomass, it's really, to me, about the things that people like John Muir could talk about not being a problem, because he could walk in the forest and it was open. That was primarily performed by our Indian predecessors who burned on a yearly basis. We can't do that, but we still have the problem. And the reason I bring all this up is because you're not looking at a 1 or 2 year problem. You're looking at a continuing problem for the next 30 years, probably. And it would be very helpful, I think, to let the public understand the scope of the problem, which so far the solutions are very good, but they don't take into effect how much of a problem there really is in the Sierras or the Cascades. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Okay, is there anyone else that would like to speak on this? All right, I don't see any other public comment, and we don't have any phone calls. So we'll go ahead and close public comment. Thank you very much. Bring it back to the board. What action are you looking for from the board today?
None. This is just None. This is just a presentation for your board to give you a status update of where the 3 pillars are. And the NDRC team will make an appointment with you sometime in the future to, again, give you an update of where we are and as we progress in each of the 3 pillars.
Okay.
So thank you.
Thank you very much. And all really good news. Some really important acknowledgement of some of the challenges that we're facing. So thank you very much.
You're quite welcome.
Yeah. Okay, so in kind of the same vein, we're going to be moving out to the actual site of this wonderful NDRC center that's going to start construction, hopefully after about 1 o'clock today, in fact. Look to County Council, how do we, is there anything we need to say to move the meeting? Do we give the address? How do we?
Right, you can just recess this portion of the meeting. You're going to reconvene up at the address listed in the agenda at 1 p.m. And at that time, there will be public comment allowed at the 1 p.m. item.
So we will recess. We'll reconvene at 1 o'clock for the groundbreaking celebration for the Tuolumne County Resiliency Center. That location is at 18241 Bay Avenue, Tuolumne, California, 95379. Members of the public are welcome to attend, and more than welcome, in fact, to join us in the celebration in person. Please note that the event will not be live broadcast, but it will be recorded and will be available on the county website to view at a future date. Anything else we need to talk about? Okay. Well, in that case, this meeting is in recess until 1 o'clock. Thank you very much, everyone.